Death Valley is a place where beauty and danger are woven into one tight knot. Straddling the border of California and Nevada, this national park holds several records, each one a reminder of its ruthless nature. It is the hottest, driest, and lowest national park in the United States. Here in the heart of the Mojave Desert, temperatures regularly exceed the 45 degrees Celsius mark. In 1913, the highest temperature on the planet was recorded here, 56.7 degrees, and even in relatively cool April, the thermometer can read over 30. On the territory of the park, there is both the lowest point of North America, Badwater Trench, located 86 meters below sea level, and mountain peaks, rising to a height of more than 3 kilometers. These majestic gradients create a maze of canyons and gorges where the unprepared traveler can easily get lost. Despite all the dangers, thousands of tourists come here every year to see the golden sands of the dunes and the colorful rocks of the canyons. Many of them take winding backcountry trails far into the backcountry of the park, where cell phone service is non-existent and the nearest help may be hours away. It was here, amidst this silent expanse and dangerous beauty, that a story unfolded in April 2021 that once again reminded why this place got its ominous name. Alexander Lofgren knew firsthand what it was like to overcome challenges. In 2011, he served as a combat engineer in Afghanistan, where he learned how to operate in extreme conditions and make quick decisions. After 4 years of service and an honorable discharge from the U.S. Army, the 32-year-old veteran found a new calling, helping other service members. After earning a bachelor's degree in political science from Arizona State University, Alex began working in the office of Congressman Raul M. Grijalva. As a member of the Wounded Warrior Fellowship Program, he worked to support veterans in southern Arizona by working on the crisis line and helping those in difficult situations. It was in Arizona that he met 27-year-old Emily Henkel. She came to the state through the AmeriCorps Vista program to work for a nonprofit organization helping veterans. It wasn't just the work that brought them together, but a shared passion for traveling and exploring nature. Alex, with his military experience and love of the outdoors, has become a trusted hiking partner for Emily. In early April 2021, the couple decided to take a day trip to Death Valley National Park. The plan was simple: visit the park's popular spots, Artist Drive, Devil's Golf Course, Racetrack, and Badwater Basin, and then return home. They carefully prepared for the trip by taking a supply of water, camping gear, and food for the day. Their white 2018 Subaru Forester was a reliable vehicle that could handle the park's dirt roads. Before leaving, Alex, like a seasoned traveler, filled out a logbook with the planned places to visit. It was a routine precaution that would later play a crucial role in their fate. Neither Alex nor Emily could have guessed that their ordinary trip would change their lives forever and leave an indelible mark on the history of Death Valley National Park. The day began as planned. After driving along the park's main road, the couple decided to turn onto Gold Valley Road, a dirt road designed for four-wheel drive vehicles. This secluded trail was about 13 miles long and went deep into the park, cutting a path through the wilderness. Their Subaru Forester was built for such roads, and at first no problems were anticipated. Around 5:30 p.m., the silence of the wilderness was broken by two sharp pops. Emily felt her heart drop into her heels. As they got out of the car, they found the two tires on the passenger side had been punctured by sharp rocks. With only one spare tire, the situation was becoming critical. The sun was already slipping toward dusk, coloring the rocks in disturbing shades of red. They found themselves 22 miles off the main road, in one of the most remote areas of the park. There wasn't a soul around. Phones showed no signal, no shade, no water source nearby. Nothing to help in a situation like this. The lifeless landscape stretched out in all directions, reminding why this place is called Death Valley. Survival mode kicked in. Alex, with his military experience, methodically began to assess the situation. They carefully checked their supplies: a few liters of water, enough for 3 days, a couple of cans of canned food, flashlights, and a basic survival kit. Emily laid out a map on the hood of the car, while Alex studied the terrain around them. They had a decision to make, and their lives depended on it. After much deliberation, they decided not to go back the way they had come. Instead, they mapped out a route to Mormon Point via a mountain pass. The route was shorter, but considerably more difficult. As they prepared to leave in the morning, they left a note in the car. 2 flat tires heading for Mormon Point have a 3-day supply of water. Around the car, they had laid out an arrow made of rocks indicating the direction they were headed. After settling into the car for the night, they tried to conserve their strength for the challenge ahead. The temperature was dropping rapidly, a typical contrast of the desert, where the heat of the day is replaced by the penetrating cold of the night. Tomorrow, they were to cross one of the most dangerous sections of the park, where steep canyons and sheer cliffs could be either a path to escape or a death trap. The night silence of Death Valley seemed especially oppressive, as if foreshadowing the trials that lay ahead. At 4 o'clock in the morning, when the sky was still studded with stars, Alex and Emily left their car. An early exit was necessary. They had to get through the difficult mountain terrain before the heat of the day set in. The route to Mormon Point took them over a mountain pass on a marked trail, but the terrain left no room for error. The path traveled through a canyon sandwiched between the steep slopes of the Black Mountains Range. Ancient cliffs, formed by millions of years of geologic activity, loomed overhead in dark silhouettes. The trail gradually narrowed into a narrow passageway between the steep canyon walls. With each step, the terrain became more challenging. The rock here consisted of a mixture of metamorphic formations, making every step potentially dangerous. Steep slopes were dotted with sharp rocks, and the trail often looped along the edge of cliffs. Even for the experienced hikers that Alex and Emily were, this route presented a serious challenge. The April sun began to rise above the horizon, gradually filling the canyon with light and warmth. The temperature was rising quickly, reminding them why even at this time of year Death Valley remains one of the most dangerous places in the country. The shadows from the rocks that provided temporary shelter from the sun grew shorter and shorter. Moving forward, they reached a place where the canyon narrowed even more. Here, the trail led them to an unexpected obstacle, a 70-foot waterfall. A vertical rock barrier blocked the path like an impregnable wall. It was an established climbing route, requiring special equipment, ropes and safety harnesses, which of course they did not have. They were faced with a tough choice that would change everything. The sheer wall of the waterfall, as high as a 7-story building, towered silently above them like the final frontier between life and death. Here, in this narrow canyon, they had to make a decision, the price of which could be unimaginably high. Alex began to scrutinize the rock, trying to find natural ledges that could serve as a support for the descent. As a former military man, he was used to assessing risks and finding solutions in difficult situations. Emily watched his actions nervously. "No unnecessary risks," she insisted as Alex began to carefully descend the cliff. "One step at a time. Take your time. Be careful." Her voice echoed off the canyon walls as Alex slowly made his way down the steep surface. Suddenly, the movement stopped. "I can't find where to put my foot." Alex's voice sounded strained. "I'll have to climb back up." But as he tried to get back up, the irreparable happened. "I'm losing my footing." Those words made Emily's heart quicken. "What do you mean you're losing your footing?" she shouted in panic, frantically looking around for anything that might help. But it was too late. Moments later, Alex was tumbling 70 feet off the ground. What happened next was the scariest moment of Emily's life. By some miracle, Alex was still alive after the fall. He was able to yell to her to call for help. But in this wilderness, with no communication and miles away from civilization, help seemed out of reach. Emily was faced with an impossible choice. Moments before Alex fell, she had spotted a possible route of descent on the left side of the canyon, a narrow crevice in the rock. It was a dangerous path where any mistake could cost lives, but the only way to get to Alex. Despite her racing heart and trembling hands, she made her decision. In that moment, she had only one thing on her mind. She had to be there for him, no matter what it took. Clinging to the sharp edges of the cleft, Emily began her slow descent. The rock crumbled beneath her hands. Every movement could be her last. About halfway down, 30 feet from the ground, she was trapped. The walls of the cleft were too wide to grab onto. There was no turning back. Throwing her backpack down in the desperate hope of cushioning her fall, she closed her eyes for a moment and did the only thing she had left to do. Emily unclenched her hands. The impact with the ground was like an explosion of pain. Her ankle twisted unnaturally and snapped with a crunch. But in that moment, driven by adrenaline and overwhelming fear for Alex, she felt almost no pain. Limping and stumbling, she made it to him, but faced the harsh reality that the 70-foot fall had left Alex with injuries incompatible with life. On this Easter Sunday, April 4, 2021, Alexander Lofgren died in her arms. As the first wave of shock subsided, Emily realized the horror of her situation. She was on a narrow ledge in the middle of a steep canyon with a broken ankle. Alex's body lay nearby, but the worst part was that there was another cliff ahead of them, a 100-foot drop in elevation, making further travel impossible. Even without her injury, she had no chance of overcoming this barrier. The first day was filled with despair, guilt, and endless what-ifs. Every glance at Alex's motionless body brought a new wave of pain, sharper than from a broken ankle. Just a few hours ago they'd made plans, and now... Emily realized these thoughts wouldn't help her get out of here, but dealing with her emotions was nearly impossible. Taking inventory of her supplies, she realized that she had water and some food that they had packed the night before. A survival kit was also in her backpack. Using the materials at hand, Emily built a rudimentary shelter, stacking rocks for protection from the blazing sun and the piercing night wind. Every movement was difficult, physical pain mixed with emotional devastation. Each day around 2:30 in the afternoon, the sun peeked into the canyon, turning the narrow ledge into a red-hot oven. For the next 4 hours, survival became a real challenge. Without the ability to shelter from the direct rays of the sun, being in one of the hottest places on Earth, every minute seemed like an eternity. During those hours, the heat was so unbearable that even grief was overridden by the primal instinct to survive. Emily realized that she was completely dependent on the rescuers. But hope of rescue seemed elusive. This was such a remote and inaccessible place that the chances of being found seemed minimal, and yet she did not give up. Every day she told herself, "They will find us. We will be saved." Sometimes she caught herself saying "we," and a new wave of realization of loss came over her head. The nights were especially hard. The temperature in the desert was plummeting, and the sounds of Death Valley at night and the impenetrable darkness added to the feeling of utter loneliness. In the darkness, reality seemed distorted, nightmarish. The presence of Alex's body was a constant reminder of the tragedy, but the thought of leaving him was unbearable. He had been there all this time, so close physically and so unattainably distant. In those long hours of the night, Emily would often talk to him, telling him of her fears and hopes, of how much she wanted to live and how much she missed him. All that was left was to wait and hope that someone would find them in this vast stone maze. Those 5 days in the Death Valley Mountains could have been an eternity, but while Emily was fighting for her life, a massive rescue operation was unfolding outside the canyon. When the couple didn't return home by the evening of April 4th as planned, their loved ones sensed something amiss. By April 6th, worry had turned into certainty. Something had gone wrong. The Inyo County Sheriff's Office immediately sprang into action. A full-scale search operation was launched, bringing together multiple agencies. Rescuers methodically checked every hotel and motel in the Death Valley area. The California Highway Patrol disseminated information about the missing through all possible channels. The National Park Service utilized all available resources, from rangers to volunteers. The U.S. National Park Service joined the search, providing additional resources and experienced personnel. Search teams worked day and night, scouring the park's vast territory of more than 13,600 square kilometers. It was a race against time. Everyone realized that in the desert conditions, the count was days. On April 7th, the operation expanded. Search teams thoroughly surveyed the entire main Death Valley Highway, stopping at every monument and landmark. In the hands of the rescuers was an important piece of evidence: the logbook Alex had filled out before the trip. It was like a treasure map in reverse. The rescuers methodically checked every location listed: Artist Drive with its colorful cliffs, the bizarre salt formations of Devil's Golf Course, the mysterious Racetrack Valley, and the vast white wasteland of Badwater Basin. But all of these checks were inconclusive. On April 8th, a long-awaited breakthrough occurred. During another aerial patrol, pilots spotted a white Subaru Forester. The car was parked on Gold Valley Road, a remote dirt road that wasn't even on their original route. That discovery was a turning point in the search. In the car's interior, rescuers found a note that finally pointed in the right direction. 2 flat tires heading for Mormon Point have 3 days' supply of water. Now that the search teams knew where to look, the operation entered a crucial phase. Every slow minute could determine the fate for the missing travelers' lives. Early the next day, early in the morning, the silence of the canyon was broken by the distant sound of engines. At first, Emily thought she was imagining it. She had visualized this moment so many times over the days. But the sound grew more and more distinct. Her heart beat faster, the first time she'd heard a sign of human presence in 5 days. As the noise of the helicopter grew louder, she began desperately waving her makeshift signal, fighting the growing panic. The U.S. Navy helicopter appeared from behind the rocks, and the rumble of the propellers echoed off the canyon walls. The moment the crew spotted them was both a triumph and the beginning of a new challenge. The helicopter hovered over the canyon, but rescue proved to be a nearly impossible task, even for experienced military rescuers. The narrow canyon walls had become a real trap. The powerful airflow from the blades created dangerous turbulence. At first, the 2 rescuers who had rappelled down the ropes could not even reach the ledge where Emily was. Wind gusts tossed them from side to side, threatening to smash them against the rock walls. 20 minutes of strained attempts seemed like an eternity. The helicopter maneuvered, trying to find the best position. The slightest mistake in this stone corridor threatened disaster. Finally, after several risky maneuvers, the rescuers reached Emily. Now the equally difficult task of getting her upstairs was ahead of them. Acting with extreme care, they secured her in the rescue stretcher. Every movement was calibrated. In these conditions, even a small misstep could cost a life. Emily squeezed her eyes shut as the stretcher began to rise. After a few agonizingly long minutes, she dared to look down. Beneath her stretched a vast landscape of beige cliffs, the same maze that had nearly become her grave. Emily was taken to a nearby hospital where doctors immediately began treatment. Her broken ankle required emergency surgery. The decision to keep her shoes on during the 5-day ordeal, despite the intense pain, proved to be life-saving. It prevented critical swelling and helped save her foot. The next 6 days in the hospital merged into one endless stream for Emily. Physical pain mixed with emotional trauma, and the rescue seemed like a bittersweet triumph. She had survived, but the price of that survival was unimaginably high. Every time she closed her eyes, she was taken back to that moment in the canyon when everything changed forever. News of the tragedy quickly spread across the country. Alex and Emily's story touched the hearts of many people, especially in the veteran community. Alex, who dedicated his life after his military service to helping other veterans, left behind a legacy of service and caring for others. Shortly after being discharged from the hospital, Emily returned to her hometown of Cincinnati, Ohio. Physical recovery was a long time coming, but even more difficult was dealing with the emotional wounds. She realized that her life was divided into a before and after of those April days in Death Valley. The canyon tragedy changed more than just Emily's life. It made many people think twice about safety in national parks. Rescuers emphasized the importance of careful preparation for traveling to remote areas, the need to have reliable means of communication, and to inform loved ones of their plans. Even experienced travelers, which Alex and Emily were, could encounter unforeseen circumstances in the wilderness. Alex Lofgren's tragic death was not in vain. Congressman Raul M. Grijalva, whose office Alex worked in, initiated a bill called the Alexander Lofgren Veterans and Parks Act. This legislation would fulfill what Alex believed in so much, making America's natural beauty more accessible to veterans. Less than 3 months after the tragedy, on July 1, 2021, the bill was introduced in Congress. It passed through the House of Representatives with record speed, already receiving approval on July 29th. And on December 27, 2021, just 8 months after Alex's death, the President signed into law a bill giving all Gold Star veterans and family members the right to free lifetime admission to national parks and federal recreational areas. For Alex, nature has always been a place of healing and renewal. As an Afghanistan veteran, he understood the therapeutic power of wilderness better than most. Even while working in his congressman's office, he continued to help veterans by answering crisis line calls and supporting those in difficult situations. Now his name is forever linked to the law, helping other veterans find their path to healing through communing with nature. Alex and Emily's story is more than just a chronicle of the tragedy in Death Valley. It is a reminder that even the most seasoned travelers must treat wildlife with the utmost respect. It's a story about how love can push us to do desperate things, and how tragedy can turn into a legacy of helping others. Death Valley continues to attract thousands of visitors with its rugged beauty. Its canyons and deserts remain as majestic and dangerous. But now, thanks to Alex Lofgren, these places are more accessible to those who, like him, have dedicated their lives to serving the country. His name carved into the law has become a symbol of hope and a reminder that even in the darkest tragedy, a light can be born to light the way for others. This story makes you think about a lot of things. What would you have done if you were Emily in that moment at the waterfall? Is it worth risking your life to save another person, even if the chances are minimal? And can we be truly prepared for nature to test us in a similar way? Alex Lofgren is dead, but his legacy lives on in the law that bears his name, and in the thousands of veterans who are now free to explore America's natural beauty. Perhaps that is the main lesson of this story. Even the worst tragedy can lead to something important and meaningful. If this story touched you as much as it did me, please support the channel by liking and subscribing. This is important for further development of the channel and improving the quality of content. Share your thoughts in the comments. What do you think about this story? What lessons did you learn from it? Your opinion is really important to me. I'll see you in the next video where we'll be treated to another amazing story. Take care of yourself and your loved ones.